with the media now, and you kind of see this big transition, McAfee getting to ESPN, it seems more loose. It's like the suit and tie is kind of going away. What have you seen since the beginning of being on ESPN to now? How much it's integrated more of like a casual? It seems much more casual now than it did even 10 years ago.
We're on a bus, right?
Well, yeah, but we're not a major network.
No, but you are. Barstool's a major
network. But I'm talking about like the Fox Sports, NFL
like what,
Network,
I guess traditional
ESPN,
media. You're
traditional
talking about
media, yeah.
Right? I mean,
because you see, it seems like it's changing quite a bit.
That kind of TV.
That kind of TV right there. That suit that you picked out and you said, "This
Men's
is the
Warehouse,
one,
buddy.
This is the one."
Men's Warehouse from
The
Houston,
TVs that
Texas.
had-
I remember where I bought
Not
that.
a bad mop on top of the head there.
Dude,
That's good.
Look at that.
You miss it?
You shouldn't. Hey, you shouldn't.
Do you ever?
You're a good looking bald guy.
Yeah. You
Let me
have
tell
a
you
good shaped
something.
head.
By the way, thank you.
That's a win.
It's a win. Now I'm glad I flew to Nashville.
There
I
it
feel
is.
better about myself and the shape of my
Words
head.
of affirmation, brother. That's what we're here for.
Thank you, guys.
But do you miss
together? Yeah, of course I do.
But
Are you kidding me? Of course I do. But I'm also more aware of people's hair now.
Are you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm more aware of it. But I look at stuff like that. It's so weird, like certainly when I'm watching with my kids and you're watching a 30 for 30 or something, and my face will pop up like the Jordan documentary, The Last Dance.
Mm-hmm.
They pop me up showing a Rodman, doing a Rodman lead in from when he, bolted the team or whatever. And my kids are just like, "That's you?" I'm like, "Yep, that's me." And great picture right there. I remember we did that once upon a time. That was Nate Burleson's haircut back in the day on NFL Network. So they put that on my hair. But I miss my hair. Thanks for asking.
No worries.
Yeah, but what the difference is again, like, content can come from anywhere. Players now, instead of speaking after games, will go and do their own podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Their own material isn't just what they put on a stat sheet. It's what happens on the floor or a field or a court. And then they take it to their own microphone. So post-game press conferences aren't as crucial for them to do. Obviously, from my perspective, it's crucial for them to do because there's still a viability in having a professional questioner ask questions of an athlete after a contest. But so there's that. Streaming. My show is streaming every single day. And that's not so-called traditional, but I think at some point people will view that as traditional media.
Right.
And then you guys, you're perfect examples.
We are, aren't we?
You are. Yeah. You honestly, you are, is that what you do and how you do it. And you've got an audience, a significant audience, and an audience that is very, die hard. And so you may not be traditional because you're sitting on a bus and people will, consume you in a way that's not just taking a remote and popping a television on. Doesn't mean that it's it just means it's a different world.
There's obviously so many more ways like consume entertainment now. For you, is it more difficult because you have to follow so many more outlets? Because it used to be pop on ESPN, NFL Network.
No, I guess news. I hate the word social media. It just sounds so stupid. But but I also can't say X either. Mm-hmm. So I'll say Twitter till I die. But that I'll look at that or other news outlets or whatever. I'll see it that way. Mm-hmm. But it changed SportsCenter. I mean, that happened, when I started SportsCenter in 96, or when I started with SportsCenter in 96, SportsCenter had already been, like 15 years old at that point in time, or 17 actually. But when I first went on the air with that Flock of Seagulls haircut, I people were tuning into SportsCenter because they hadn't seen the game, or that they'd seen it once. We assumed you hadn't seen a highlight of it yet. So you're tuning into a highlight show to see what happened or see it again for the first time.
Especially with baseball too. Like you get the top 10 baseball at nighttime. You're like caught up on all the games that kind of happened that day.
Sure. So that's the way it started. And then towards the end of it, again, I know I keep aging myself on this show, but with the advent of phones and the popularity of the internet, I kid you not, man, it's the truth.
Yeah.
That SportsCenter went from the show I just described to assuming anybody who was watching it had already not only seen the game, known the result, but had already seen highlights of it multiple times in the palm of your hand or on your home computer. And so the show then changed for an anchor from being, somebody who's turning a phrase, dropping a line here and there, having fun and giving out the information, to being a host of two analysts arguing why something happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I freaking hated that. Hated it. I didn't like it at all. So with less highlights, instead of doing a highlight that was 2 minutes long, it's now 40 seconds long. Let's bring an analyst on. Like when Sean Salisbury and John Clayton had schoolyard fights, and I was the anchor sitting in the middle of it saying, okay, guys, let's move on, and I hated that. Hated it. I complained about it, and I don't know if that's the reason why I was handed a cardboard box, but I was. And so, the show changed. I didn't want to do it as much anymore as they wanted me to do it. So there was a parting of the ways about 9 days before my wedding. And so my head was completely spinning, and NFL Network, was the obvious choice for me to.
How soon after the ESPN?
Right away.
So even right before the wedding, you're
right away.
You're
absolutely.
With NFL Network.
No doubt. And
so your head was spinning for like 12 hours.
Well, no, because I had another option too.
So my text him was like, "Hey,
nice.
Hey, heard you got fired.
No,
you want this job?" And he's like, "Oh my God, my life is horrible." All right, I'll take it.
No. In all honesty, I thought I'd be at ESPN forever. It was my, it was my identity. 26-year-old kid, Sports Center, ESPN.
It was like the program.
It was 100 million households, and and then the other option I had at the time was Turner Sports was remaking their Braves broadcast. They wanted me to be the play-by-play guy for the Braves broadcast, and I just got married. Didn't want to start my marriage off by saying I'm going on the road for 70 games. Just probably wouldn't have been a really productive job for me.
Made it hard, the honeymoon hard.
And so, and then the other option was move out to Los Angeles and plant a flag for NFL Network for an executive named Steve Bornstein, was the president of ESPN when I first started there, and he handpicked me to start NFL Network. And I'm like, that's it. So I went and I did that. But it was an identity crisis where I'm like, what the hell am I going to do? And
was the firing sudden? Or
hell
was
yeah!
We had kind of felt like that.
No, we had 72 hours left in a negotiating window, and then I got a fax. My agent got a fax saying we were done, and then 10 minutes later, a phone call from USA Today asking for comment on why I wasn't renewed. And I'm like, well, who the hell said that to them? Because only my future wife and my agent at the time knew that this had happened. I'm like, holy shit!
Your wife would do that to
so,
you.
but listen, I honestly, I have nothing but the fondest of memories from them and friends galore. Like, still, I'm tight with a lot of people from back then. Dan Patrick, Keith Olbermann, KO, and I will text frequently. Chris Fowler was at my wedding. I just saw him the other, couple months ago. I love the guys, and Linda Cohn, a bunch of people I'm still friendly with. Long story short, though, that's the difference. You know what I mean? Like how the business has changed. That was from 96 to 03. Now this is 21 years later. And that's the thing I love about the show that I do, is that every day, if you want to watch it live, you can, on the Roku channel. And then you want to listen to it live, you can on terrestrial radio with Westwood One, or you want to Sirius XM or TuneIn if you want to stream it. Odyssey, if you want to stream it live, you can. If you want to watch it on demand, there's, the Roku channel has that. It also repeats on the channel 210 that I'm on. And there's also YouTube clips. And then there's also the podcast version of it, all 3 hours. So you can listen to it on demand. You can also, we chop it up, Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and all that. So there's different ways of distributing stuff now, even better. Yeah. Quite honestly, it just used to be just one viewing somewhere. Now it's, you can put it everywhere. Right. Because people don't have either the time or inclination to take in something live. They have the right to listen to it or watch it whenever they want. So that if you can cover all those bases, like that's the win. And that, how much better is that than the past? So that's how it's changed.
I know it's been 21 years since you were at ESPN, but what did you miss the most from ESPN? Because going from doing all sports to just NFL, you're talking about how much you love baseball. You knew every single team, every single player. Right. Do you miss that stuff, or is that just
I still get to I get to still do it on a daily basis on my daily show, but if I missed anything about it, it was just the platform. I
Mhm.
mean, those 4 letters are pretty popular.
Yeah.
Right.
know
You
what I
feel
mean?
like that's the pros.
I'll never forget. So I started with NFL Network. We went on the air week 11 or week 10 of the 2003 season. I don't know why we decided to start in the middle of the season. We weren't ready. Ducks didn't get in a row, whatever. At any rate, so we were 11 weeks old during our first Super Bowl, and so my wife, like I told you, she's in the business as well. So she was working with NBA TV and Turner. She did some sideline for TNT, NBA on TNT. And so the NBA All-Star game was in LA of February of 2004. Again, NFL Network launched in November of 2003, and about 15 million homes in NFL, and ESPN was in like 110 million homes at the time. And so I basically willingly, or not willingly, but again, I got handed a cardboard box, but 100 million, almost 100 million eyeballs lopped off of what I was doing, just like that. And so I went as Susie's +1 to a couple of these NBA parties for the All-Star game. And some guy comes up to me and goes, "Rich Eisen, I watch you every day." And I'm like, "Oh, wow, this is cool." So I can crowdsource how he's watching NFL Network, because I didn't know who was watching it at the time. Okay. So I said, "Oh, wow, you get NFL Network?" He goes, "What's that?" And I'm like, "That's what I'm on." He goes, "You're not on ESPN anymore?" And I'm like, "I haven't been on since last May." That was my last Sports Center, May of 2003. I mean, I haven't been on ESPN in like 8 months, 9 months. He goes, "Really?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he paused and he goes, "Are you all right?" That's what he said to me. And I'm like,
"Were you?"
I'm like, well, I said to him, well, at that point in time, I was now offended. I'm like, you know, like I'm standing in front of you, like talking.
I'm
like,
alive, aren't I?
You have a mirror, I'll fog it up for you.
Yeah.
You know, like I mean to get aggressive on the guy. He came up to me, he said he was a fan, you know, but I'm like, you know, I'm kind of, you know, got my hackles up.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, but that was the general sense of why would you, I even get those questions today. Why did you leave ESPN? Why would you do that? Like, 20
something years later.
Yeah. But I'll still, walking through an airport, have people hum the Sports Center theme at me as I'm going through security. You know,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Leaving a mark,
which is great.
That honestly makes sense, because with social media not as big as it is now, like you're able to know any move that happens. Like when Skip leaves FS1 or Fox, you know about it, you know why, you know the rumors.
Yeah,
everybody's
right.
tweeting and posting. But when NFL Network was coming on, what years was that again?
2003.
Right. So like
week
we're
10.
Right. We're in high school going into college. You almost just see you are now on NFL Network, and you're almost thinking like it's hard to disassociate the two. Like, okay, the NFL Network might just be ESPN. It's like maybe they just have them on this show, to where you really didn't know that there's like, oh, there's NFL Live going on, and then there's like what was it on? What are the two different shows? It was NFL Live and the other comparable one on
NFL Total Access.
NFL Total Access. To where then you started to realize like, okay, there's two
different
different networks.
Man,
I wonder
but
what
when
happened.
you're in high school too, you're not realizing like these other businesses are doing X, Y, and Z. You're thinking, oh man, they all work together.
Right, exactly.
There was no NFL Live when NFL Network started, and I you know, again, I will
trailblazer.
It's not just me; it's literally everybody that started NFL Network and has worked on it. To be very honest with you, like when we first started, you know, I remember I went on Kimmel's show to help promote it. And he even said to me, he goes, "What are you going to talk about?" He said to me that you'll be back on ESPN by the spring. And it was a big laugh line in the room. It's funny. It was funny, but it did kind of like, you know, hit me in the gut a little bit here.
Taking a lot of gut shots during this time.
But that's what a lot of people were saying. What are you going to talk about when there's no games on? I remember, again, one of the final Sports Centers I did in April of 2003. We were in an ideas meeting before, like, what are we going to do? We have some time to fill. And somebody brought up, let's do a breakdown of, you know, some of the top team, you know, secondaries in the NFL. Like, let's break it down. What are the best secondaries? They were laughed out of the room. They're like, what are you talking about? It's opening day. It's Masters. It's March Madness. We're going to talk football. Literally, that was said in the room. Now, there's 15 other shows like that on ESPN and everywhere else. And I think that is large part to NFL Network showing you can talk about it every day. You not only can talk about it every day, there's a market for it. There's an insatiable appetite for it. You know, we mercilessly made fun of to have a show based on the schedule being released. Because again, you know when a season's over, the next season, who plays who and who plays who where. You know it. It's all handled based on what year it is for your team to play another division, and then where your team finished in your division order. Then you suddenly play other teams in other divisions to finish in the same place. You know exactly. Just the only thing you don't know is the order of where you play them and on what channel and at what time. That's the only difference. And so basically we made a show celebrating the announcement of paperwork. You know what I mean? Like here's your schedule, and we made a big deal out of it. And we had merciless fun made of us. Now everybody's fascinated about it.
Yeah.
Oh, my God, now you're playing 3 out of 4 on the road in December. Like that's NFL Network. The Combine, perfect example. Now some coaches don't even go to the Combine because they watch it on NFL Network. They get a better view of shit than they do up in the stands through their little binoculars. So I will absolutely, on behalf of everybody, take credit for the NFL being everywhere right now.
The NFL has done a great job
100%.
of making it a year-round event. Everything that you hit, the schedule, the draft, the combine.
Right.
Like in July, you guys are still talking about things.
Like,
it's
exactly.
wild.
Now people can't wait for training camps to open.
Right.
Like,
and there's always rumors floating around.
Whoever, first day of training camp, I bet in 2003 when we first launched, there might have been like 5 reporters in these places. You know what I mean? Like now it's who's
everywhere.
not signed, who's going to get signed, like what's going to happen. And fans are just like, who am I going to draft in my fantasy teams? It's unbelievable, so absolutely. It's totally changed, and in terms of just one last thing on the ESPN thing, like the biggest exposure distribution I've ever had in my career were those 2 a.m. sports centers and then 1 a.m. Eastern sports centers that I did with Stewart mostly, where we would do it live and then we would wait till whatever games on the West Coast were done, if they were still going on, close the show up, edit it together. Like folks would edit it together, but it would be edited together after we were done with it. And if there was any mistakes live, we'd have to stay afterwards and fix them. That's a lonely moment at like 3:20 in the morning when you have fucked up and everybody's got to stay late because of your screw up. You know what I mean? That's not fun. But we would do it, and then I would go home 4 a.m., 4:30, try and just calm down because you're hyped up from doing it, go to sleep, and then at 5 a.m. that show would re-air all the way through to 1 in the afternoon, and I would be dead asleep for 7 of those hours. While I'm asleep, everybody's watching it. Biggest exposure of my career television-wise was when I was sleeping for those. And to this day, I will still get people come up to me, and it freaks me out, because they're there with their children to say, I watched you before going on the school bus. Before I went off to 5th grade, I would watch you and Stewart do this thing. Nowadays, there would never be a show that's 7 hours old that's shown on TV. You know what I mean? Like news is breaking. Now there's Get Up and First Takes and all of this shit. I shouldn't say shit, but all of this stuff that's on the air.
All this shit.
By the way, I don't want it to sound like I'm disrespectful. All this stuff that's on my show is part of the shit. We're talking about stuff that's on the air happening right now. And TV shows that are radio shows that are simulcast on the TV. I mean, Dan Patrick is the pioneer of that. My show was put on after his on DirecTV. That's the way my show exists. Is that Dan showed it can be done, and so they hired me to go after Dan, and so at any rate, long story short is that's the difference, as well as I still get people, it blows me away. They're like grown ass men who are like 40, 38, 37, women who 35. Are that age as well, 35, who are 20 years younger than me.
I'll be 35 in September.
Oh,
September 19th.
So yeah.
Okay. Great. So, yeah, I will get that. And I love it. It's obviously a blessing to be, here in 2024 and have literal generations who are older saying that they remember, when I did stuff,